You're listening to Sox in the Basement, a production of the Broadcast Basement Limited, where every show is 30 minutes of good and comes from a basement bar on the south side of Chicago. Pull up a stool, pour a cold one, and join us right now for Sox in the Basement. Heard everywhere podcasts can be found, and always at soxinthebasement.com. You know, with all the draft hype and the Chicago Bears taking Caleb Williams and Rome, I don't know how to say his last name.
Adunze, I believe. Yeah.
I think that's what it is. I'm going to have to learn it.
All roads led to Rome.
Yeah,
baby.
listen. I'm a baseball podcaster. I don't learn the names of the football players. I'm lucky I'm able to pronounce 90% of the names. I called Lenin Sosa Lenin for at least a year. So, I mean, I do the best
That's true.
I can.
We had him running Soviet Russia for a while there.
Anyway, but with all the excitement over the draft, and it is exciting. I mean, look, the Bears put out a stadium plan where they're offering $2.3 billion of their own money. I know they're asking for $2.3 billion of our money, although I get the feeling that they're going to try to convince us that that's all going to be donated by corporations. I'm not getting into it. But I know they're putting up $2.3 billion of their own money. Jerry could possibly maybe give up the $200 million. Which is hysterical when you look at what the Bears are putting up. This is why nobody's taking that old man seriously and his threats or anything like that. But when you look at the excitement over the new stadium plan and you look at what the Bears have done and you look at the draft that they've had, you can only sit back and wish for something like that for the White Sox. And it got me thinking, Ed, that I would like to see Major League Baseball. I would like to see this with any sport, but it would be so cool. I was trying to think of what sport you could actually have a redraft every year. That's what I was doing. I was doing that.
Oh, okay.
I was like, wouldn't it be amazing if it started with me saying, wouldn't it be amazing if there was a football league where they redrafted every year? Think of how exciting draft day would be and how you would spend the whole offseason talking about, we've got to get a better quarterback and we've got to build around this player, and marquee players would be moving constantly. Like, this is the pipe dream I had, because I have
you'd have a handful of keepers. It'd be like a fantasy league, right?
I'm not even giving keepers. Like, you could just, Tom Brady would have played for a new team every year. Like in my crazy fantasy world.
He would just run through, which also means that Tom Brady wouldn't have been as good because...
No. That's the thing. So that's the thing. That's why I got off of football, because football is systems and you have to learn different plays, and I don't think guys can translate going to a new team year to year. And then it hit me. Baseball's a very individualistic sport. Like, if you're a good hitter on the Angels, you'll be a good hitter on the Yankees. You'll be a good hitter on the Dodgers. I mean, you'll come to the White Sox and you'll hit 220, but then when you go to like the Marlins, you'll become a good hitter again. So with the exception of the dark cloud that overhangs us at 35th and Shields, you'll be a good hitter pretty much anywhere you go. If you're good at catching the ball, you'll be good wherever you go, unless you're Andrew Benintendi. When you come to the White Sox, you forget how to do it. But otherwise, you'll be good at catching the ball wherever you go. And the thing that I started thinking about...
Real quick side note on that. Have we thought about the fact that Jerry might be cheaping out on the equipment? Like, maybe these are gloves he's getting played against sports and they're only using fungo bats?
I don't know.
That explain why nobody can hit a home run. Because
none of it makes any sense.
Try and hit a homer with a fungo, you're not going to be able to do it, but you can hit a single with it.
I have to admit that I didn't hear the original quote, but I've been told now by multiple people that I trust, who would not just make something up, and they all are telling the same story. That supposedly DJ was on the radio broadcast when Eloy was up after they blew the lead in their game on Thursday, and basically said, like, he's just up there waving the bat. He ain't even trying to hit anything. He's swinging, but he's not really trying to hit the ball. And all he has to do is just throw that pitch again, and he'll go, and he's sitting down again. Like, it was like one of those sequences where Derek Jackson was so tired of watching this crap, and Eloy not give any effort whatsoever, because, of course, the moment they give up a lead, they're deflated, because the fearless leader over there, who's the manager, isn't going to get anything out of these guys. And it was just like, that's where the broadcast was going on the radio, right? So, I mean, like, look, it's a comedy of errors, but think about this. I just want you to follow me on this. Just follow me on this for a second. You have the World Baseball Classic. You put all these guys together that have never played on the same team with each other, and look at the excitement of it and how they're all able to still play the game. You're a first baseman on any team that you have. And it got me thinking, like, wouldn't it be incredible to redraft every year in Major League Baseball?
My goodness.
Like, what if, I mean, you already have Scott Boras and the owners and the union all basically running a big giant business, right? Like, it's not, these teams are not really individually owned anymore, it doesn't feel like, with all the revenue sharing. I'm sure there's a way where they could come up with something where basically all of the owners, depending on their value when they start it, they'll even out to make sure everybody ended up with the money they should have had over the course of like 10 years with revenue sharing. And then anybody that ever comes into the league, or if something's sold, Major League Baseball facilitates the sale, because they really do that anyway. I mean, that's why DeBartolo wasn't the owner of the White Sox in the early 80s, and we didn't go on a run like the 49ers did with him as an owner. No, Major League Baseball rejected him and gave it to Jerry, because that they pick who they want in there. So, like, Major League Baseball should just go all in on it. Major League Baseball should just be like, yeah, we run all the teams from behind the scenes, and we really pull the purse strings, and the owners are already colluding, so now we'll just come up with set deals, and depending on where you're drafted at, that's the money you make for the year, and here we go. I think it would be fun. Like, I think it would be exciting. We wouldn't be that bad this year because Jerry wouldn't have to cheap out. And everybody would have a chance at the draft. Imagine watching the yearly Major League Baseball draft, and it lasts a week to get everybody drafted on the team, on the 40-man rosters. Think about that. Think about how much fun that would be.
Oh, yeah.
Like, right? Think about, we would be sitting around arguing, like, you know what the problem we had last year is? The problem is that we didn't have really good defense up the middle. This team's always focusing on pitching. We need to do that. Like, you would have arguments over how to construct a team.
Right. And you know, where, you know, oh, well, you know, Hahn was always a guy that would go, you know, he'd go bat heavy first, and he would ignore defense and pitching and try and grab value in the later rounds.
Right.
But
no, look, here's the thing.
Getz's strategy is completely different. And the draft strategy in and of itself would be, you know, kind of fascinating to watch from team to team, and like how the Rays do it versus how the Yankees do it.
No, what you don't understand is that I'm not saying that it would benefit the White Sox, right?
No.
It would just be more fun to watch baseball. The White Sox would go out and draft 7 first basemen.
Of course.
Right? Like, the White Sox are your drunk friend in the fantasy football draft that takes 3 kickers because he's just hammered. And he's not paying attention to what he's doing, or has 4 tight ends. And you're like, what are you going to do with all those tight ends? Whoa, yeah. Flex positions. Like, that's what the White Sox are.
He drafts the guy that was a star 3 years ago that's actually retired.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That would be the White Sox.
Wait, a Kenny Williams team in this system would be all of the old guys at the end of their prime when they're on the complete downturn and they're getting injured constantly. A Rick Hahn drafted team would be nothing but first basemen and pitchers that can't get through the 4th inning. Okay, I mean, the first 4 innings, they're spectacular, but then they hit 100 pitches after 4 innings, and then the bullpen gets drained. Even if you gave him this, that's how he would draft.
No, yeah, Rick Hahn, inefficient throw-hard pitchers and sluggers, guys who are basically 3 true outcome guys who can't play defense to save their life.
Right.
You'd have a left-handed shortstop because he would just, you know, he would have run out of spots for these guys.
Right, exactly. Like, it would be, I'm not saying they would do a good job. Like, Chris Getz would be like, well, I want grindy players that never drop the ball and they play the game right. And then all of them would be terrible defensively and they wouldn't be able to hit, right? Like, if he got an opportunity to do this, I don't know if he would know what he was doing. He'd pick an awful lot of guys that were similar to him. And unfortunately, that doesn't win championships because he was a bad baseball player and his team is filled with bad baseball players. And then even if they did a redraft, if Pedro was your manager, they would still lose most of their games.
Right. Now, the good news there is that you would probably be in a position where there might be some of the security blankets that we've watched the White Sox have over the years might be taken away by other teams before they get a chance to redraft them. But the downside is that the first round pick of Yohan Moncada every year that Rick Hahn was the GM would have just cost them.
Right, because that's how the White Sox would work. In a complete redraft league, they would draft the guy who was terrible the year before because they would want you. Those of you on social media, the podcasters, the bloggers who said they were stupid to have them, they would go redraft that guy to try to prove us wrong. So, I mean, look, I'm not saying that it would fix the White Sox. I'm just saying it would make baseball more entertaining. Like, I would watch a free-for-all draft a complete redraft. Any major sport, if they did this, it would be amazing. Like, I mean, I guess, Premier League soccer and like the way things are over there, they're constantly changing teams, constantly. All these guys,
there's
right?
All sorts of transfers and stuff.
So it is almost like a big giant draft, right? But I see this, the NFL draft. I love drafts. Draft Day is strangely a good movie when it's really only about an NFL draft. Like, I just think that people really get into the idea and the possibility. And wow, would that be kind of fun? I don't think the Sox would be good at it, but I think that would be fun. Did you see the stat to just prove my point about the fact that Pedro would still lose even if he had a new team every year? And it is incredible to me. It was from the first game against the Twins. By the way, they lost all of them in that series. 0 for the road trip. That's very White Soxian.
And also at this point, record-setting and how many times they've been shut out this year.
Right. Aaron Gleeman covers the Twins for The Athletic. Here was his tweet. The Minnesota Twins struggle so much versus off-speed pitches that teams stopped throwing them fastball. Did you know that?
Oh, yeah.
Major League Baseball teams have stopped throwing fastballs to the Minnesota Twins, but not the White Sox, who in the first two games threw 69% of their pitches were fastball and 66% of their pitches were fastballs in game two. The Twins saw higher fastball rates just one game more all year long. Only in one other game has a team made the mistake of throwing them fastballs, and then everybody learned except for the White Sox. And I can't figure out if I blame the White Sox for not having the staff that just looks these things up, or if I want to blame Pedro because he's the manager, or if I want to blame Ethan Katz, who I guarantee is only in there because Jerry said, well, we have a pitching coach, and the pitching coach has an X amount of years on his contract, and we don't fire people and pay them to sit at home. Because I can't figure out what Ethan Katz does, except he was really good with Lucas Giolito, and he supposedly made him throw with a heavy bag, and he fixed something in his arm slot, and it got him a major league job as a pitching coach. And then supposedly he was helping Dylan Cease, but since Cease left, have you seen how much better he is?
Yes.
So when I look at that, I can't figure out if it's Pedro or it's the organization or if it's Ethan Katz. But somebody sucks at their job. This is yet another fireable offense that will not go fireable because the miser up there ain't going to pay somebody. He ain't going to pay two people for the same job.
Well, look, if Jerry won't show Pedro the door, then maybe you can be shown some doors at Window and Door Superstore of Oak Forest. You can check out exterior windows, doors, patio doors, storm doors. You're not looking at pictures in a book. You're seeing in person, in their showroom, full examples, glass designs on display. It's not high-pressure sales. It's not someone coming to your house and saying, I'm going to walk away with this deal, and you're never going to see it again. Nope. Owners are in showroom. They're on site with your house. All the Window and Door Superstore installers are part of the staff. They don't farm out the work. 40 years and in Oak Forest since 1985, all major brands custom made with no stock items to make sure you get a perfect fit every single time. 1/2 block east of 159th and Ridgeland at 6280 159th Street, or check them out at windowdooroakforest.com. So, you brought up the point of who's to blame for not knowing that the Minnesota Twins have an aversion to anything off speed or breaking, and yet the White Sox throw them almost 70% fastballs, 69% fastballs, right, in the series. And the answer to that question is, I think it falls to the manager more than anybody else, because Chris Getz as the GM can put in a certain amount of things in place. He can put in coaching staff, but isn't it's got to be the manager's responsibility and the pitching coach's responsibility underneath him to prepare the pitchers and prepare a game plan for these guys, right?
Right, because we talked about that. We talked about that Marsh home run,
right?
And how it was thrown. It was the exact pitch you don't throw to him: a changeup into the hottest zone that he has.
The only hot zone that guy has.
The only place you don't pitch him, and you threw a slow pitch in there for him.
Yeah, and I know sometimes it comes down to execution, and you could sit there and argue, okay, in that scenario, was that changeup supposed to be low and away from him? and it got held on to a little bit too long, which brought it inside. But at the same time, it's like, well, wait a minute here. Why aren't you going high on the guy? Why aren't you going high and hard on the guy if that's what he can't handle? Where's the scouting report on this? And I think that's got to be some of the problem, too, with why nobody on this team can hit, because there's got to be something there, okay? And I've been trying to wrap my head around this because this is historically bad, but when you look at it, it's like, okay, but there's no way an entire team, a whole damn team plays this poorly, all right? And, Eric Fetty had a good start against the Twins. And when you think about that stat and what Fetty throws these days, right? The split change, the sweeper, a sinker. He's a ground ball guy. Everything kind of moves. He doesn't really have a four-seam fastball. That's not really his arsenal anymore. It makes sense that he went out and had one of his better starts. Now, Eric Fetty also has had a couple of good starts because I finally dropped him off my fantasy baseball team in keeping with my I ruin White Sox players until I get rid of them. So
that is true.
Yeah, that is very true. But here's the thing. This team the pitchers are constantly giving up clutch hits and giving up in moments where they should be able to get an out. They don't seem to understand how to pitch to the guy that's at the plate, whoever it is. It doesn't have to be Brandon March. It could be anybody. They don't seem to understand at the plate how they're going to be handled by the other pitchers. And we're not talking about a bunch of young guys that haven't been figured out yet, okay? Paul DeYoung, everybody knows how to pitch to Paul DeYoung. People know how to pitch to Dominic Fletcher at this point. They've seen him, all right? There's tape on him. It doesn't matter what you do. Throw to Martin Maldonado, he can't hit it. And I laugh every time, there's a video from years ago when he tore the cover off a ball against the Pirates, and it was just like, that ball must have just been, had no laces on it to begin with or something, because there's no way Martin Maldonado did that. But it's one of those things where top to bottom, guys who have a major league track record of at least being somewhere close to replacement level don't seem to have any idea what's going on. They don't seem to have a scouting report on the pitcher and what the pitcher does well or what he's going to try and do. Okay, they're all guessing at the plate. The pitchers are all just kind of throwing fastballs or throwing whatever is told, the numbers that get put down. And it doesn't seem to matter who the batter is. It's just like, okay, Michael Kopech throws fastball, slider, fastball, slider, fastball, slider. And this is what got them in trouble against the Astros a few years back when they got bombed out of their one playoff appearance where everything was the same. And it was just like, okay, this is what our guys do. And I understand you could go into this is what our guys do best, play to their strengths, but also at some point on some level, there's got to be somebody in that organization who is, and I think this starts and stops with the manager more so than the GM, and I could be wrong about that, but there's got to be somebody on the coaching staff who is sitting there saying, this is the guy that's starting today. This is Chris Paddock, who's got an ERA of 8.56 and hasn't gotten anybody out. He threw a pitch to his mother, and she took him deep, okay? Chris Paddock is going to try and throw a fastball. He can't spot it right now, and then he's going to try and come back and get you to chase the changeup, which he also cannot spot. So be patient, take pitches, make it be in your zone. He's probably going to walk you. He's going to put a bunch of guys on, and at some point he'll serve up a meatball because that's what he's done all season long coming back from Tommy John. No, instead, Chris Paddock goes out and looks like he did a few years ago when he was a rising star for the San Diego Padres, and he didn't do anything different than what he was doing. The analysis, the breakdown on the MLB Network following that start was he looks the same. He looks like he's doing everything.
Right. He isn't doing anything different. The Sox are just not prepared for him.
The Sox just looked like they didn't know what was coming and what to expect from a two-pitch pitcher.
Again, and that again is coaching. And I know we have a new hitting coach, but I'm mad at the hitting coach too. I know that there's bad talent on this team. I think that people get that conflated with the idea of, well, then the coaches couldn't do anything. No, I'm sorry. There's still Major League Baseball players.
There's veterans on this team.
Chris Getz did go out and bring in guys that were at least positive wins above replacement at every position on average, essentially. He did bring in a team that should hover around 500. The stats say that they should do it. You have to put some of this on the coaching. Were they ever going to make it to the playoffs? No. Were they going to have a winning record? No, they're probably going to be 10 games under. But this is historically bad, and you have to start blaming the staff that has been assembled. A lot of that comes from the fact that the White Sox do things just terribly, just the way that they run things. Most times a manager comes in and says, well, okay, this is my staff I want to put together. And then the manager has some sort of say over the entire staff, and then the staff looks at the manager as he's like the boss because he picked them. And if he gets tired of something not working, that guy, they get rid of him and they go bring in another guy. But the White Sox, what they do is they say, well, we signed a pitching coach, and the pitching coach is signed for X amount of years, so it doesn't matter who the manager is. That's a completely different position in our company. And that's what they do. So you get this hodgepodge. I don't even know whether or not any manager on the White Sox has ever had the power to walk in and talk to one of his coaches and say, you're screwing this up, do better. And Pedro ain't going to do it because he couldn't lead a 6-year-old's choir. He's not a leader of men. I think that's very obvious to anybody, especially if you have ever, I don't care if you've been middle management, I don't care if you managed the McDonald's. If you've done anything where you've had to be in charge of something in your life, you listen to him and you go, that guy couldn't lead anybody. That guy, they would break the fries machine. And he wouldn't even know what to do. The McDonald's would shut down if it didn't burn to the ground. He can't run anything, that guy. Okay? But that's the thing. The White Sox really don't set up their managers for success either. Okay? So there's a lot of factors. I think that's one of the biggest problems. One of the biggest problems is there's a million reasons why this went wrong. So everybody just keeps saying, well, it's not really this reason, it's this other reason. It's all of them. And until you start making a difference by getting rid of people and having that accountability, I heard about that all off season, how we're going to have accountability. We're gonna make our fans trust us again.
And
Didn't you say that, Getsy, to AJ Przinsky? And then after he called you out on it, he called you out on it, and now he's not an ambassador for the team. Like, we all see what's going on here. There is no accountability. And that's my problem. And the only thing I don't know is whether or not it's Getz's fault that there's no accountability, or if he was brought in and is an inside hire and the old man basically said, yeah, you're in charge, but run it all by me. And that may be one of the biggest issues.
While the coaching staff rarely makes the right decision, when you make the right decision, it feels really, really good. Like picking the perfect accent rug or choosing a good night's sleep over an all-night crime show binge. It feels really good to make the right insurance decision, too. That's why State Farm agent John Harrell is right here in Homewood to help you select the right protection at the right price. John will make sure you understand your State Farm coverages so you know what to expect if the unexpected happens. The State Farm agent John Harrell, it's easy to make the right choice. Just call him. And when you want the real deal, like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
Joining me on the phone line right now, the Sox Nerd, Dave Marin, who, just like us here on Sox in the Basement, must work diligently to find something entertaining about the White Sox, and he has to put it up in a stadium that has tumbleweeds, I believe, blowing through most of the sections. The Sox Nerd is brought to you by the Village of Lamont. Want to experience a downtown with real history, great eats and drinks, and green spaces filled with adventure? Visit the Village of Lamont. Shop, dine, drink, explore, and check out the Quarryman Challenge. On Saturday, May 11th in Lamont, it will kick off downtown a 5K and 10-mile race across the bluffs south of downtown. This thing features 1,000 feet in elevation change. It is an absolute beast. Get more information. Sign up, quarrymanchallenge.com. Nerd, what do you got for me?
Chris, let's talk White Sox birthdays. And let's face it, sometimes you need to be distracted from what's transpiring on the field. And I'm good at that. Gavin Sheets celebrated a birthday on Tuesday, which got me to thinking, which Sox players have performed well on their birthdays? For starters, Sheets was 1 for 2 with a run, a double, and a walk on Tuesday. That's not bad, but not nearly as good as Mike Caruso. Yes, Mike Caruso, who is the only White Sox player with a 4-hit game on his birthday. On May 27th, 1998, Caruso celebrated his 21st birthday with the first of his 4-hit games that season in a 12-9 home win over the Yankees. Caruso shares a birthday with the great Frank Thomas, who is one of baseball's great birthday hitters. The Big Hurt slashed .462, .571, and .769 with 2 homers and 9 RBIs in 11 birthday games. Frank is the Sox leader in every birthday department except triple steals and homers. Sherm Lawler is the Sox all-time leader with 3 birthday homers. The last Sox player to homer on his birthday was Danny Mendick on September 28, 2019. As for pitching, the Sox have 3 complete game birthday shutouts, but none since 1934. The last Sox birthday complete game was by Frankie Berrios on June 10, 1976, when he beat the Brewers in Milwaukee. Garrett Crochet may get a shot at both of those milestones as his birthday is June 21st and the Sox are in Detroit that day. By the way, the last Sox pitcher to start on his birthday was Miguel Gonzalez on May 27, 2016. Who had the best birthday game for the Sox? How about should-be Hall of Famer Andrew Jones? On April 23rd, 2010, he capped the 39th multi-homer game of his career with a walk-off blast against Seattle. He is one of just 3 big leaguers with a game-ending dinger on his birthday and the only Sox player to do it. Of course, all birthdays aren't happy for the Sox. On Wednesday, the Twins' Willie Castro commemorated his 27th birthday with a 3-run homer in a 6-3 win over the Sox. Before I get to my zinger, I remind you pearls like these can be found on my blog, which can be accessed at soxinthebasement.com. And I'm also tweeting about Sox birthdays daily. My zinger. My birthday, which I share with my wife, is March 6th. So not a lot transpired in Sox history, including birthdays on that day. May 9th, the birthday of one Chris Lanuti, is a different story. Chris, you share a birthday with Floyd Robinson, who is the only player in Sox history with 6 singles in a game. And on your 7th birthday, when you were probably at your party at Chuck E. Cheese, Harold Baines ended the longest game in history with a homer in the 25th inning. That's it, Chris. Probably more than you wanted to know about Mike Caruso, Frankie Barrios, Miguel Gonzalez, and your birthday.
I distinctly remember on my birthday the Harold Baines thing. I do.
Hey, hey man, I'll dig it up. I'll find you anything. Next week we might be talking. Who knows? So we'll see.
Yeah, well, thank you for that because we need it. That's the Sox Nerd. Thanks so much, my friend. Interesting stat for you here, Ed. Bob Nightingale put this out. A lot of people kind of put this out, but he was very succinct in this. This is after the White Sox dropped to 3-22, after the last loss to the Twins to finish off that road trip. And he broke it down. 4 games in a row they lost, then they won. 5 games in a row they lost, then they won. 6 games in a row they lost, and then they won. And now 7 games in a row they lost. Now, we're recording before the next game. I believe that as you're listening to this, they won last night. Because the pattern says they win, and then they're going to lose 8 games in a row. What do you think about that?
I think that's depressing, but impressive at the same time. Like, you can't plan for something like that.
Like, when they came up with the Matrix, they weren't even devious enough to come up with this. Because I feel like I'm in a simulation, because that's weird, man.
And the only thing I can figure there is we've got Pedro figured all wrong. He's a mad genius. He's just trolling everybody.
What he's doing, it's like he's doing Morse code. Like he's trying to actually show us that it's all part of the plan. Like there's some kind of secret thing going on here, and if we could just crack the code that's being laid out in front of us, we would actually understand what was really happening.
Yeah, he's going to come out in the middle of the 10-game losing streak and go, you know what happens when we get to 10? And then they're going to rattle off like 50 games in a row or something like that. No, that's not going to happen. But it's that. What a weird. I love baseball for being weird, but that's one of those things where it's like, this team has just reached a level of absurdity that even their losing patterns are ridiculous and unrepeatable. Like, at least we've got that now. Okay, so if that keeps up, I mean, I don't know how far that could go. I can't do that math to figure out over the entire season how that would play out, but that would be something. I mean, I guess they could start over. Lose 1, win 1, and then lose 2, win 1.
I also want to give a pro tip.
Oh, yeah.
And you probably saw this. Pro tip if you're ever going to see the White Sox play the Twins in Minnesota. We have a friend of ours
yes,
who was on Q101 for years, Eric Christensen. Eric at Q101. And he's not there anymore, but he's a good friend. Me and Ed have known him for at least a quarter of a century each. And he went to go see
continuous quarter of a
game.
century, the same quarter century, by the way.
Same quarter century, right. He went to the game, the last game of that series, and ended up in a suite. And the reason is, and this is a pro tip for you, there is a Section E right next to the entrance to Suite E in Target Field. So if you can buy tickets for Section E, he accidentally walked up, showed his ticket to an usher. They just saw E. He walked right into a suite, sat with a bunch of strangers, ate free food, drank beer for the entire game.
Which is just amazing.
There's your hack right
but
there.
Also,
if you're ever going to Minnesota.
I mean, that it's in keeping with the name Target Field. I mean, that's why, you're walking down and you're looking for shoes and you end up buying, frames instead, right? Suddenly you're buying a mirror for the wall that you didn't know you needed. So
he sent us pictures. He's like, I'm sitting in a suite.
Yeah.
The people who were in the suite, it took him about halfway through the game until they realized he wasn't supposed to be there. And then he told them, the usher let me in because I told him I was in E, and they all laughed about it and let him stay. So I'm just saying, Suite E, just buy a Section E ticket and take your chances. If you're at the, what else are you going to do? You don't really care about the game. This is why I'm going to be going to ball games very differently this year. I've mentioned this. I'm going to go to Cork. I'm going to eat my food beforehand.
Right.
I'm going to hang out. I'm going to have a couple of craft beers. That's where I'm at over on 33rd and Princeton. And then I'm going to travel inside probably a couple innings into the game. They'll already be down or they'll be winning. But we all know how that's going to end. And then I'm going to kind of just pick a seat wherever I want to go. I'm going to buy the cheapest seats up in the corner and move. I'm going to hang out on the on the concourse. I'm going to treat White Sox games like it's Wrigley. I decided it's the only way that I can enjoy the game. If I bring a kid, we're going to sit there and I'm going to teach him how to heckle. Because you know what? They can hear me. Because the place is empty. If you ever wanted to teach your kid how to heckle, this is the time, right? Get in there, work on some heckles. The third baseman is going to hear your heckle when you're sitting out in the 108. That's all I'm saying. You're out by the right field pole, and you yell something to the third baseman. He can hear you these days. Lean into it, White Sox fans. That's all I'm saying. Just lean right into what the experience is. Take advantage of the whole thing. Throw your feet over the chair in front of you and lounge like it's the old ballpark in the late 80s. That's what I'm telling you to do.
So you're saying, from a certain point of view, it's better at the ballpark.
Right! It's better at the ballpark, Ed.
Sox in the basement. Sox in the basement. Sox in the basement.
Sox in the Basement. Heard everywhere podcasts can be found and always on soxinthebasement.com.